Hello and welcome, I am the Sterling and today we'll be playing Going Medieval. As usual in the last couple of episodes we've been very busy. We finally built our defensive structure at the front of the mountain, consisting of an armor smith, a blacksmith, a bower and a shield workshop. But due to lack of iron ingots, we were not successful in creating any new armor. Hence we built a furnace, which is now in full swing. So hopefully we can start producing some armor, but in the meantime we're now ready to get stuck into making new buildings. And in this episode that's exactly what we're going to do. So sit back, grab a cold one and let's get started. Straight off the bat, the fodder's a bit low. It's sitting on 456 fodder at the moment. And I'm not planning to do any culling of our animals anytime soon. We are in the middle of summer, day 4. So I'm going around the map collecting as much fodder as I can. In fact, I missed this big section over here. Perfect. But once they collect that fodder, we should be right for quite a while. And our animal population has actually been thriving since we've stopped killing them. Funny enough, who would have thought that the animal population would grow when you stop killing them? But while on the subject of death, there's actually a vital thing we are missing from our settlement. A hospital. We need a place for our settlers to go when they're injured where they can get all healed up. And so that actually is the first thing that I want to do this episode. And I'll also give our resident Dr. Kari a permanent place to live. Because at the moment, he's just in this room over here above the shield workshop, and that's not his permanent living quarters. Now, the place I've actually earmarked for the hospital is this section here. But before we go and start planning out the hospital, we need to come up to the research tab. We need to go all the way to the start because up here you got infirmary bed, which, as you guessed it, unlocks the infirmary bed. It's going to cost 40 chronicles, which is no issue. We've still got plenty. We've got 282. So let's unlock that now. Done. So now we're able to build infirmary bed. Now that we're able to build infirmary beds, I'm going to keep saying that now, aren't I? Now that we're able to build infirmary beds, and I shouldn't put an apostrophe on it. Now that we're able to build infirmary beds, we can start planning out the hospital. And there's the initial outline for the hospital. Now, there's no real need for us to actually put a cellar into the hospital, though I'm actually tossing up whether or not to put a cellar and just store limestone, but at this point, I don't think I will. Moving forwards, I do need to find a place to put limestone. I have a few different ideas in my head, not sure where I land on any of them just yet, but before I get off track, let's continue planning out the hospital. So next we just need to add the floor, and then we can add the infirmary beds. They're just going to run across the back wall like so. Next, we'll add a couple of doors, a few windows across the front and on the side, and then we just have to go through and add some beams. Now, if you come to the overlay rooms tab and come across to infirmary, you'll see that to create an infirmary, you need at least one infirmary bed and at least 2 medical shelves. Cannot have shrines, entertainment structures, workstations, or beds. So now when we come down here to the decorative racks, we have wall tool shelf and a pottery shelf. We do not have the medicine shelf needed to make this into an infirmary. So once again, we must come to the research tab and we need to unlock chemistry, but we can't, as we need to unlock cooking first. So that's what we're going to do. By unlocking cooking, we get a stove and the ability to make lavish meals, which that's fantastic. It's going to cost us 30 chronicles. Once again, we've still got plenty. We've got 237 left over. So let's unlock that now. Done. Now we can come across to chemistry. By unlocking chemistry, we get an apothecary table and a medicine shelf. Honestly, I think that's the first time I've ever said apothecary first time. It's going to cost us 30 chronicles, 15 textbooks, 15 thesis. So let's unlock that now. Done. And now we can build the medicine shelf. We're going to place one right here and we'll place one over here. Done. And that is now the infirmary complete. Now it's time to build Kari's home on top. But first we actually need to find a way to get him up there. So we're going to put a sneaky set of stairs at the back here, just like so. Now we're going to separate the house into 2 sections. Here on the left-hand side will be his bedroom, and here on the right-hand side will be the kitchen / entertainment / religious area. And then we'll just have a little corridor that runs in the middle. So nice and straightforward, a wall either side, a couple of doors so we can actually enter said rooms, and then the usual furniture. A bed, a chest, a brazier, a stone table, stone chair, a backgammon table, a restitutionist shrine, and then finally a food shelf to top it off. Now all I have to do is add windows, some roofing, and we're ready to start building. So let's hit play and let them get to work. Fantastic, we've built the much needed hospital. We're off to a great start this episode. Now I've already gone through and designated this bed for Kari, and I've gone through and set up the food shelf. So now that's everything taken care of with the hospital. So next time we get attacked and we have a few wounded, we have a place to heal them up nice and quickly. Now I can just come over here and delete this bed because that's one less person sleeping on the ground. But that now means that this bed is now vacant. We still have 3 people sleeping on the ground. We have Garen, Viro, and our new resident Thite. As Thite does operate the armor table, I will set this bed for Thite, once again allowing us to delete another bed. So now that's 2 beds deleted off the floor. We've just got 2 left. After a quick count, I realise that once again the Sterling can't do math. We only have 8 houses, not 9. So I can't delete this bed. Otherwise, Golmir will have nowhere to sleep. We can only delete 1 bed off the floor. Nonetheless, that's 1 less bed than we had at the start of the episode. But that does mean that we need to get a wriggle on and start building more homes. So let's build another 2 right here. They're going to have a very similar layout to what we've got down the front here, minus the defensive balcony at the front. So the wall layout will be very similar to what you've seen over here. And these 2 rooms will consist of a tailor on the left and then the much needed kitchen on the right, which was handy that we unlocked cooking before in the research tab, giving us the stove. But before we can plan out the rooms, we must first plan out the cellars, which will obviously house the textiles for the weaver and then carcasses for the butcher. Now I think that's a good start to the building, so let's hit play and let them get to work digging out the cellars. Fantastic, that's the cellars for the next 2 buildings now complete. Now these 2 buildings, even though the layout is quite similar to that of these 2 buildings down the front here, they will in fact be different. And actually furthermore, they'll be different from each other as well. So we'll start with this building first, the tailor. And I think that's about the 3rd different thing I've called this episode. Because essentially, I don't just want to make this a workshop. I kind of want to make it a bit more than that. Almost a retail store. As it's going to have the clothing store downstairs, then the 2nd level will actually be the weaver. And then above that will be 2 levels of their home. So for the store, it's pretty straightforward. Stairs at the back, up and down, couple of doors at the front, and then topped off with plenty of windows all around. Then we just have to come across the furniture, click on the armor rack, and then just litter the room with plenty of armor racks, just like so. Now these armor racks will not house any armor. They'll only have summer and winter clothes on them. And I'll actually go through and set some for winter and some for summer. That way we don't get all stocked up on one particular type of clothing and then the rest is just laying around rotting somewhere. Then the next level, as promised, will be the actual weaver's workshop. So we'll need a sewing station, which I'll plop right here. Then we'll place a couple of tool shelves, as it is a workshop after all. And then finally, I'll put down another few armor racks. Now these armor racks will have a lower priority than the ones downstairs, as I want these ones to get filled up first, and then the ones in the workshop will be more of a buffer. So then if we run out of space on the ones below. Then the next level will begin the home. It will be the dining room / entertainment / religious area. And it's actually going to be a different size than the rest of the building, just so that it breaks up the look a little bit. So slightly smaller, as you can see. Now we just have to add the furniture. We'll add the food shelf in the corner here, making this area, if you can dare see what I'm doing, into a little pantry. Wow, it's always so hard to see when it's orange, isn't it? I guess it makes it a bit of a surprise for you when they actually build it. A stone table, stone chair, and a restitutionist shrine. I've decided not to add a backgammon table, only because it's quite a small room, and at this rate, every single household's going to have a backgammon table, and we really don't need to. And then I'll just top off this floor with a little bit of a lean-to roof, a few windows dotted around, and that's the next level complete. And now finally the top level. The walls run in line with the floor below, and then as for furniture, all the usual stuff. A standard hay bed, a brazier over here in the corner, and a storage chest over here. And once again, I know it's hard to see, I promise these things are here. Then it's just a matter of putting a few windows on the front and a roof on top. But this building's also going to have one more thing different from all the other buildings. If we come over here, we're going to add a wooden door right here to the outside. We're then going to grab our limestone floor, like so, add a couple of windows, and then top it off with a couple of chairs, making a nice little balcony overlooking the water. Just something a little different. So now there's nothing left to do but hit play and let them get to work. Fantastic. That's now the tailor/retail store complete. And another home for our settlers to live in. I've already gone through and set up the food shelf, and I've already gone and set up the bed for Garen. Now, Garen is our steward. Ideally, we want another tailor living in this house, as we need 3 tailors. A tailor for the tailor workshop, a tailor for the armorer's table, and a tailor to make shields. Now, in saying that, I'm not 100% sure that making shields is the tailor's job, as when you look at tailoring, they can use both sewing stations and armorer's tables. But when you look at smithing, they also use armorer's table. So I'm not sure whether the tailor can only make armor on the armorer's table or if they can make shields. This is something I'm going to have to look into. Otherwise, Thite will no longer live here at the shield workshop, and she'll come and work here at the sewing station. It just means I'll have to keep my eye on this armorer's table to see which settler, either Hisky or one of our tailors, actually works this station. Because if it ends up being Hisky, well, then I know that down the track I need another smithy to purely work this armorer's table. Regardless, I need another blacksmith anyway to operate these furnaces, and then a third to operate this armorer's table. I think a lot of this settlement is actually going to be made up of blacksmiths. And speaking of blacksmiths, I have good news. Hisky has been busy making armor. We have our first plate armor and loads of great helms. So that's fantastic. And he must be processing a second piece of plate armor, because before I had 70 iron ingots. I've got none. But when we click on the armorer's table, yes, he's making a second plate armor. This is great. We are finally in the right direction. So that means we have to come up to the Manage tab, and we get to change some armor. We're going to start with Thorlek. As he is the king, he should be the first one to get plate armor. So there we go. I've swapped his preference over from all armor to plate. He's now dropped mail armor, which will then be collected and broken down, giving us even more iron, which is good. And then he'll hopefully put on some plate. While I'm at it, I'm also going to swap his helmet over to melee. The melee option is just one that I made in a previous run through, and it is just great helms. I also have an archer setting, to which was your chainmail helms, but we're not using them, hence melee. I could probably go through and count how many helmets we've got and actually start getting our settlers to put them on. There's 7 helms, so we can go through and tell 7 people to put on great helms. Fantastic. Not many left now, just 4. And now we've built another home. You know what that means? We can now destroy another hay sleeping spot. Done. And while we're in the spirit of destroying things, let's destroy this sewing station, as it's no longer needed. Done. My word, we're getting a lot done this episode. And so while we've got momentum, let's continue. We still have the kitchen/butchers to build. Nice and simply, we're going to tuck this butcher's table into the corner here, just like so. And now we get to add a new workstation, the stove that we unlocked before. And we're going to plop it in right next door, just like so. But we can't just stop there, as we're missing another key component. As when you look up the rooms tab, you need at least 1 stove, at least 1 butcher's table, and at least 2 wall pottery shelves. So as you guessed it, we need to add pottery shelves, just like so. Now for this level, we just have to add a couple of doors, a few windows, a couple of arches, and we're right to move to the next floor, which once again, we just need to add the walls and a few windows. And then we're ready to start adding the furniture. As you've probably already guessed, will be the dining/entertainment area. So we have a stone table, stone chair, a food shelf, a backgammon table in the corner, and our restitutionist shrine at the back, which I might actually just change this layout ever so slightly, as I didn't put the wall in the correct place. That's better. Backgammon table can go all the way archway over here now. Done. One last look. Yep, I'm happy with that. Add a few archways. And then we're ready for the final level, which will be our resident cook's bedroom. Galmir. So we'll add the walls, a door, a few windows, and then another door. Why? Because as you've probably guessed, this is going to be a bit of a balcony. Once again, something a little different. Well, sort of. So we'll just run some merlons on the front, and now we're ready to start adding furniture. We'll add a bed, a brazier, and a chest. And that's the bedroom taken care of. Now all we have to do is hit play and let them get to work building it. And there we go. The kitchen is now complete. Now, in good old Sterling fashion, I changed things up a little bit at the last minute. I decided to move the wall one space forwards so then I could move the door to the actual bedroom from here to here, thus being able to put a stone archway in here so I could build this roof. And I actually quite like it. It looks a bit different. Now, in the comments, some people have actually been asking me, why am I putting standard roofs on top of these buildings? There's no rain, so there's no reason for it. And they make a great point. And they also mentioned about putting rooftop terraces on, which is another good point. But personally, the reason why I'm putting roofs on top of all these buildings and not rooftop terraces, which we could actually use to defend the mountain and fight in the streets, is purely for the look. Nothing more. It is 100% vain. I just think it looks great with roofs. And honestly, a little bit silly. I feel that if we were to be building rooftop terraces everywhere, it'd look all too much the same. It almost look like towers. Where this way, I can get a little creative with some of the roofs. Like this one over here, this one here, and even the way I've done this one here. And it just breaks the city up because essentially, deep down, it's all the same layout. But having different roofs really makes it that you can identify each individual building, which that's what I'm after, especially being so cramped, which, mind you, it being cramped is deliberate. This is meant to still, nonetheless, be somewhat a medieval city just underground. And medieval cities were very cramped. And so, if that's what I'm going for, tick. But now Garen's room is built, and I've already gone through and set up his bed, so then he's got a place to sleep, and I've already gone down to his food shelf and set that up. On top of all this, I've already come down to the kitchen and set up the food shelf to house raw food ready to be used on the stove, and I've also set up the butcher's table so we can then continue butchering carcasses. What I haven't done yet is set up the stove. So we're going to click on the stove, and we're going to come across and start making meals, as we already do. But we're not going to make 74, as we've already been doing. We're going to make 20. Why? Because we're also going to make lavish meals that we unlocked earlier on. We're going to make 100 of those. But the downside is we now have to get our hands on herb seeds, as herbs are a key ingredient to lavish meals. So thinking about it, we might actually just come back up and for the moment, keep the meals around 70. I know. We're not starting this again where I'm indecisive, I promise. We're also going to make pickled vegetables until we have 10. We're not going to make salted eels because we're not dragging enough salt in to make it worth our while, nor are we getting any eels. So no point making them. And as for animal feed, we're not bothering with that at the moment. The dogs are just eating out of our stored food in the cellar, and our livestock are eating hay directly. So there's no point wasting our time making animal feed. Maybe later on down the track, that's something we need to look into. But now that's the kitchen taken care of. So now we get to come over here and we get to delete another hay sleeping spot, which leaves us with our final sleeping spot for the moment, which that's fantastic. And now we get to go on a further deleting spree. We're going to delete this food shelf. We're going to delete these 2 campfires because we no longer need campfires as we have the stove. Everything we make on the campfire, the stove does better. And then finally, we're going to delete the smokehouse. I was only smoking meat while food was scarce. Now that our farms are in full swing and our cellar is in full chill, I don't see much of a point on keeping the smokehouse. If you can think of a reason, well, let me know. And finally, we get to delete all these shelves that we're keeping our textiles on before. That's nearly everything gone. Or is it? We forgot the butcher's table. There we go. Now that's satisfying. Next thing we're going to need to do is start building this building here, which will house our stonemason. And I haven't quite decided what's going here yet. I will have to have a good think about that. Unfortunately though, this will all have to wait for another episode, as this is all the time we have for today. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.